Hey everybody, how you guys doing? I know, I'm back at the bench. Friends, let me tell you, the last, I don't know, probably month or two, I'm going to say 2 months, I haven't been at this bench much. And I've had a couple people ask why, and just the way life goes, friends. Fall time, being a father, let me tell you guys something. Being a father has changed me. I'm an evolving man. I don't know about you guys, but I've lived many lives, and maybe we'll get into that sometime. I'm definitely not the man I used to be 10, 15 years ago, but I'm just always evolving. But friends, I love sitting at this bench working on power saws. I'm hoping if everything goes well this weekend that I can get that 460 back together. It's been sitting there for about 4 weeks now, and I'm looking at it. It's sitting on, in the roster ready to go, and I still got that 372 that I ported, but I want to get the 460 going and see how that thing turned out. I've never ported one of those yet, and I want to see if a Tin Man Ice 460 is any good or not. We won't know. I got to get something off my chest. I pride myself. This channel, I put a lot into this channel, friends. First thing in the morning, after dinner, stuff like that. Saturdays, I'm usually out here, and anytime I get spare time, I'm working on content. And giving back to you guys and helping you guys with your power saw builds is what I started this channel on and what I continue doing. And you guys know the deal here. There's no sponsored videos or anything like that. You guys 100%, watching my videos 100% is what runs this channel. So I want to give a special shout out to Wolf Creek Saw Shop, Ryan. I know I mentioned him a lot. Ryan has been so good to this channel, friends. And when I went to Bunyan, he shipped a pretty good sized box of highway parts and t-shirts and sweaters to Bunyan. And I want to take a special, a moment to thank Ryan. He gave that stuff to me, friends, so I could give it away to you. So those of you that receive cylinders and pistons and pens and t-shirts and sweaters and all the other stuff that I gave away, that was from Ryan at Wolf Creek Saw Shop, just saying thank you to the Tin Man community. So thank you everybody that supports him. He's been a big help to this channel. Okay, I got to get something off my chest, friends. It's been bothering me, and the only way to sleep at night and to look at yourself in the mirror is to be open and honest, and that's how I am, whether it be in my personal life, my professional life, or on this channel. Friends, I've been lacking in the email department. Let me tell you guys. You guys know if you email me, generally you'll get a response. I try to answer as many emails as I can. But friends, I am way behind. So today's video, I'm going to open up my Tin Man Saws at Gmail account here. And I'm just going to pick some random emails. And I'm going to answer your guys' emails today on this video. First email of the day, friends. Burke3720. Burke writes, Brian Burkheimer is the fellow's name. Hey, Tin Man, love watching your stuff. You're very humble and knowledgeable. Thank you, buddy. Wanted to pick your brain on the Husky 562. Now, you guys know I have a 562. It's pretty clapped out, but it's still going. I thought it was going to give it up by now, friends, but it's still running. Anyways, he wants to pick my brain on a Husqvarna 562. I found one for sale with a scored cylinder for $100. I was going to pick it up, but I was wondering if they make a big bore kit for those. I saw in your vids that yours is stock. Would it be worth porting? Or would it just be smart to put a piston cylinder on it, since most agree they are strong stock saws? Any info suggestions you could give me would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, brothers. Brian Burkheimer. Well, Brian, thanks for the email. That's easy for me to answer. So, number one, they do not make big bore kits that I'm aware of for the 562. So we can scrap that idea altogether. Generally, I find big bore kits do not make more power than a standard bore motor. Generally, within reason. But I like stock bore saws. 372 is kind of the exception. 266 I like. 272 ported. I'm not as good at porting a 272 as I am at a 266. I will say that. But so, anyways, Brian, no big bores for those. So we can nix that idea. Would it be worth porting? Well, yes. 562s poured up really strong. You need to find somebody that knows what they're doing with those. There's so many porters out there. Find somebody that has a good reputation, is a nice person, and can get the job done. And if their waiting period is a long time, you can generally think or know that that person's work is solid gold, because the longer the waiting period, if people are willing to wait for your saws, that means you do good work, is what I say. I'm still fighting that cold off, friends, but it's starting to loosen up. Okay, so yeah, ported would be excellent. Or should you just put a piston and cylinder on it, since most would agree they're strong? So a 562, Brian, if you need a top end on one of those and it's scored, I would definitely be looking at the bottom end. So most 562s that I find blown up, because they're auto-tune, it's really hard to score an auto-tune saw unless it has an air leak. An auto-tune will generally tune around an air leak. You need to look at the bottom end bearings and seals. I would probably split that saw and go through it. Now, here's the problem with those saws. You need to fabricate or buy the factory tool to split those. You can't use a standard chainsaw splitter like you see me using on this channel all the time. Those have crank stuffers, meaning it's a full circle crank and you can't put the splitter in there. So if you go back in my channel, I did make a splitter for mine and it worked pretty good. I'm not actually sure where it is. I think it's in my other toolbox, Brian. This is just my odds and ends. Yeah. So I don't have mine to show you, but if you are going to buy that for $100, you can get aftermarket top ends now. The bearings and gaskets and seals are all OEM for that. I would definitely be looking at the bottom end. Make sure the crank doesn't have any play. Make sure your seals aren't blown out. So stock, those things are excellent. Ported, they're really good. I don't have a ported 562. I run mine stock. The only thing I would do to that saw stock, if you're going to run it stock, is do a muffler mod to get the heat out. Those saws run really hot. So anyways, Brian, 562 is a good saw. It's one of the only stock saws that I run, and I love mine. I've had it for 5-6 years. It's a great medium-sized saw for cutting average-sized wood. So there you go, Brian. I hope that helps you out. Thank you for sending an email. Let's find another one. Okay, Eric Rogers. This is a longer email. I'll kind of paraphrase it. Eric Rogers has a 42cc saw. He said it responded well to mild porting. Sort of. First start after porting, it fired, second pull, and idled perfectly. I let it go for about a half an hour, then began tuning. It took 30 seconds and ran beautifully. I let it sit for a few minutes and it restarted first pull consistently. The problem is it sat for about a week and I needed to use it. After a couple of pulls, it's puking fuel out of the exhaust. It will eventually start, but it's very difficult. Once it does, it's a beast. I've checked everything over and over and can't figure this out. Side note, the saw has been garbage since it was brand new. Extremely difficult to start right out of the box. If the saw is junk, I'm not going to be all that disappointed. Just like to know what is going on for future projects. Okay, Eric, so I'm guessing you have a no-name, and I use that term loosely, one of those 42cc saws you could buy at a hardware store, and you ported it. It's probably clamshell. Now, the first thing I would say, if you have a saw that doesn't run properly to start with, hard to start, often a hard starting saw is too lean, by the way. 99% of the time, if it doesn't have an air leak, okay? If everything else is good, meaning it passes a vac and pressure test, if it's hard to start, generally the low jet's too lean. Give that low jet an eighth of a turn, more, and usually they'll start starting nicely. Then when it gets warm, you can tune it accordingly. Now here, my problem is it's getting cold out. A lot of my saws that I've run all summer are now lean in this weather because the air is denser when it's cold and you need more fuel. So what ends up happening this time of the year, my saws get hard to start and I have to tune them. So that's the first thing I would say. But if you have problems with your saw stock and you port it, generally it's going to make it worse. But it doesn't sound like your saw is lean. It sounds like your saw is rich. Um, I'm going to say I would be looking at the metering lever height in your carburetor. If your metering lever is too high, generally that'll flood the saw. And if you're spitting fuel out of your carburetor, you have a fueling issue. Generally, that's a metering lever. It's going to be hard to track down this one, but that's the first thing I would look at. Secondly, those clone saws, the no-name saws, generally the carburetors on those things are not very good. That's why I really only port OEM saws with OEM carbs because OEM carbs usually turn or tune perfectly. Aftermarket carbs, not so much. So that's about what I can tell you, Eric. Don't beat yourself up if that saw doesn't run. It's probably just because of the type of saw it is. Those cheap saws, they can be fun to learn how to port on, but if it's not a professional saw, generally it's not going to be the best runner. It's going to be hard to tune. It's going to have a finicky carb. It's not going to oil very well. So don't beat yourself up, Eric. Fiddle with that carburetor and make sure the metering lever isn't too high and low. And also go through the fueling system. Make sure your carb has good gaskets, good diaphragms in it. Make sure your fuel filter and impulse, if you have one, are all good. If you check through all that, I probably wouldn't go too much farther in that saw. Anyhow, there you go, Eric. I hope that helps you, buddy. If it doesn't, if you go through all that stuff, maybe send me another email. The only other thing I can think of, Eric, if you over intake your saw, you're getting too much fuel. It could be spitting back through the carb, and that could cause you to be over fueling, and that could make it hard to start. So if you grind your intake timing too long, and that's really easy to do on a small saw, you're over pressurizing the case, it spits back, and you end up with a saw that doesn't start and idle very good. Sometimes they won't even run. Sometimes they'll run once they get started. So pull your air filter off and look and pull it over, and if you can get it running, see if it's spinning back through the carb. If it is, you're probably over intaked. Okay, that's what I know, Eric. Thanks for the email, buddy. I appreciate it. Okay, next one. This is an easy one. Jesse Roses. Would I be able to send you my saw to be ported? Absolutely. That's an easy question to answer. No. I really appreciate folks reaching out to me, but I've never taken any work from the YouTubes. I know that sounds crazy, friends, but this channel has always been about helping you guys with your saws. I'd rather teach you how to port than take saws in to be ported. So, Jesse, thank you for your interest, but I just can't find the time, friends. I don't know how I could fit in any more into my day-to-day, like porting saws. I am a super low production shop and always have been. But anyhow, Jesse, thank you for reaching out to me. Michael Ruggiano. I like that. Ruggiano. Tin Man, looking for clutch cover for my Johnson 2077 Turbo. That's a rare saw. I don't think I've ever seen one of those. It's a long shot, but I know you have old parts. Maybe you know someone else who may have parts. Poulin Pro 475 and Partner 660 will also work. Thank you, Mike. You know what, Mike? I've never seen a Johnson 2077, so I definitely don't have a clutch cover. I don't know, buddy. eBay maybe? I don't know. A lot of the parts that I have, I've either bought locally, I've bought saws to break down for parts, or by the goodness of the people out there, somebody will see that I need a part and they'll send me a part in the mail. I'm super blessed that way. Other than that, I don't have a special parts hookup. I used to have a guy in Arkansas that used to help out the channel, but I don't have that anymore. So Michael, just keep scouring the interwebs and hopefully you'll find one, buddy. I know what it's like. I have a few saws here that need rare parts and I can't find them. So anyhow, Michael, happy hunting, buddy. That's half the fun. Sometimes it takes years to put a saw back together, but when you do, it's pretty sweet. Okay. Tim Hill. Tin Man, can you give me some suggestions on my first port job on a 365 special? OEM cylinder, highway pop-up piston. I've done some grinding on the piston, like Iron Horse showed in his video. Any advice you can give me on where to start and what to grind would be awesome. And the numbers I could anticipate seeing. I live in Arizona and cut a lot of mesquite. Barbecue. I like me some barbecue. In his younger years, he did some tin knocking, gave up HVAC and became a journeyman lineman 16 years ago. Right on, Tim. Okay, so now, Tim, if you go way back in the channel, way back, it's probably in a playlist if you look. Friends, if you're looking for info on a specific saw or a brand or porting, check out my playlists. I have been adding and building playlists since the day I started. I have 30 or 40 playlists. So I'm pretty sure there's a 365 special playlist. So that will be the first thing, Mr. Tim Hill. Now, if you look at any of my porting, Tim, on any of the 372 work I've done on this channel, you can pretty much copy that shot for shot on a 365 special. Open up the lower transfers. If you lighten up the piston, that really helps. Not too much intake timing, but you get the idea. I find 372s and 365s really wake up with transfer work. Now, because I keep all the numbers in every book, or every saw that I've ever ported, I write down in a book. This book right here is full of timing numbers. I have my 365 special right here. My 365 special has a meteor piston and a stock jug. These are the timing numbers with no base gasket. My squish was 22 thousandths. My exhaust was 101. Transfers were 120, so that's 19 degrees of blowdown. Intake was 72, so 144 degrees of intake timing. My ported numbers on that saw, now don't write this down before I talk about this. My exhaust is 99, transfers are 120, my intake is 76 or 154. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this straight up. I love my 365. It's a great saw. It runs like a Swiss watch. Part of that is my intake timing. 76 degrees or 76 degrees of intake timing, okay, is 152 degrees of duration. My 365 is low on duration, which means it starts, idles, and holds a tune. It's very consistent. The only thing I would tell you not to do on my particular saw, it's at 99. It's a very fast saw in medium to smaller wood and softwood. If you're cutting hardwood, I would probably leave it at 101. Maybe widen it some, not too far, just a little bit. Widen it some, maybe go to 100 or 101 and leave it there. There's no upper transfer work to my 365, and it's a good build. I'm really happy with it. So I would go like 100, 120, and 152 on the intake. Try that. I think you'll be happy with it. Maybe run a single ring too if you want it to be a little extra zippy. So there you go. Hope that helps you out with your build. I love a 365 special. When I get the time, friends, I have right there, I have a 2165 Johnson red there. That is a 365 in red. I want to do another 365, but kick it up a notch. I want to see if I can build a fire-breathing 365. Mine is really strong with a good sharp chain and a good operator, but I want to make it stronger. So there you go. Anyhow, Tim, again, if you have any issues or you're starting your build, send me some pictures. Let me know what's going on, and I can help you with your build. Thanks for sending the email, buddy. Next, Pioneer 41 Farm Saw is the title. Friends, I got a ton of Pioneers here. One of these days, I know I've been saying it for years, friends. It's just time. When I get into something, I really get into it, but I want to have the time to actually do it properly. I've been collecting Pioneers for like 4 years, friends, 5 years. I got a lot of them here. I've been collecting parts. The hardest thing for me with Pioneers is most of the Pioneers I have here need a piston and rings. Those are getting really hard to find, and a lot of them need a cylinder. So you can't just go to the corner store and buy a Pioneer cylinder. That's kind of what's halted me. I'm getting pretty close to having enough parts to do one P41. I have about 6 of them, believe it or not, and they're all smoked. I do not have a running P41, so funny story. Anyhow, Brian Good wants to know about a P41 farm saw. He'd like to say thanks for sharing your knowledge on power saws. As a new subscriber, I love your YouTube channel, especially videos on vintage power saws. I recently purchased a Pioneer P41 farm saw that doesn't run and hope to get an old girl running again, as I love the vintage saws because I'm on the vintage side now. You know, my vintage saw builds are probably my best work. I think it's because nobody can whisper in my ear or help me. I just dig right in there. My vintage builds are where I shine. My newer saw builds, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're, I don't know, friends. I've always been really good at building the old school stuff. But when I'm doing production work, I want like a 372. I hate to say it. Vibration is what it is, but I get in the mood to run an old saw and I'll pull them out. Anyhow, he wants to get his saw running. My question is, do you have a supplier that has parts for old power saws? And the answer to that is, I do not. Just like the rest of you guys, I look around on the internet, and if I could find bits and pieces for these old saws, I buy them up. And really, 98% of the time, I buy up saws. If I'm going to build a P41, say, I'll buy 5 or 6 of them so that I can break a few down to make a saw or two. And that's how I do it, friends. I'm lucky now that, through your guys' support, I can buy up power saws and do these crazy projects. But honestly, it's getting harder and harder to find parts for these old saws. And that really is one of the main reasons why I don't do old saws as much on the channel. I can't find them anymore, friends. It's a blessing and a curse, but when guys like me are porting vintage saws and enjoying them and showing them off, more guys get interested in them and more guys buy them up and they get harder to find, which is cool. But honestly, friends, like I haven't bought a home light in 3 or 4 years because I just can't find them anymore in my area. I think I bought a lot of them up, but I just don't see them anymore. I don't know if other guys are enjoying them or they've just dried up, but that's the deal. So, Brian, if you're looking for crank seals and stuff like that, pop your factory seals out, go to a bearing supplier. And more often than not, a good bearing supplier will be able to get you crank seals. That's usually the biggest hurdle. Bearings, same thing. Bring your bearings with you if you want to do the bottom end. There are guys on eBay that sell the case gaskets for the Pioneers. I know those are available. Pistons and rings are kind of tricky, but you're going to have to buy usually like a no-name white box piston for those. It'll either run or it'll grenade. But you can find parts. You just got to be really diligent. So, Brian, happy hunting. I wish I had a secret supplier of parts, but honestly, I just don't. I'm in the same boat as everybody else. We're all in this together. Okay, friends. I think I will. Let's see. Here's another one. Husqvarna 371. Jason Litton. Hello, Tin Man. I watch your channel on YouTube quite often. I really enjoy learning from the content you produce. Right on. You know what? That's why I do this. I started this channel just trying to help folks out and add to the knowledge that's out there. Because once you put a video out, it's out there forever. And that's why I'm here, Jason. Thank you for saying that, because that's 100% what keeps me going. I've been a gearhead all my life. I've been turning nuts and bolts since I was been big enough to hold a wrench. I currently am going to rebuild my first saw, 371 XP Husqvarna a friend gave me. It's pretty tired. I'm in need of a new crankshaft. Mine is discolored and loose where the rod connects to the crank. Who makes a high quality aftermarket crankshaft? OEM ones are so expensive. Greatly appreciate any help or advice you can give me. Well, Jason, that's easy. If you go to Wolf Creek Saw Shop, my buddy Ryan there, NWP or Highway, either or, those are not the cheapest cranks on the market, but they're way cheaper than OEM, and I'm a fan of those NWP cranks. They are strong, very nicely made, and they're reasonable enough that you can. Because let's face it, friends, if you're rebuilding an old saw, you know, here's my 371 that still is having issues, but it is what it is. That's half the fun. This saw here, it's a nice saw. It's not the cleanest saw, but you got to be able to put these things back together on a budget. And it's like, say your budget is $600 to buy a saw and rebuild it. Well, if an OEM crank is $300 and you have to buy the saw for $100, that only leaves you $200 to replace everything else. Sometimes it can be budget, the budget constricts it. So, or restricts it. So I totally understand that. That's why I show aftermarket parts on my channel, because often you can't get them for the saws I'm working on, the OEM parts, or the OEM parts are rare or super expensive. So Jason, hit up Wolf Creek Saw Shop, Ryan, and he'll hook you up. I'm really happy with the NWP cranks, and the Highway cranks are just as good, but I'm liking the NWP because that's what I've been using. So anyhow, Jason, happy rebuilding. 371 is an excellent, excellent saw. Okay, I think I'm going to do one more and I'll call her a video. Brian Dwayne, I have a still 045 AC Super with a 54 millimeter bore. There are a couple of score marks on the exhaust side of the piston. The cylinder, it was not damaged. The saw runs fine and has 182 psi cold compression. I'd like to replace the piston, but there are not a lot of aftermarket ones available. I have found Proline, Little Red Barn, Golf, or Colbin. Most people recommend Meteor and Highway, but they do not make a piston for the saw. Do you have any suggestions? Okay, Brian. So, out of all those brands, I would probably pick Proline. I've had my experiences with Little Red Barn and Golf. I don't know about Colbin. Maybe Colbin's the one. Honestly, some of those saws, you're going to have to just buy whatever piston you feel safest and try and run it. My experience with some of these, different brands of pistons is they blow up. I've had experiences with certain brands of piston breaking rings and grenading. So you're kind of at the mercy. Now, here's one thing I'll tell you, okay? 54 millimeter bore. What I have done in the past is I will find another saw, maybe a 66 Magnum. I will buy a piston for that, and I will try and fit it into the saw. Now, I have a lathe and other means to make a piston fit. You may not have access to that stuff, but sometimes you can get a piston that fits fairly closely and you have to do minimal work. So that's what I would do if I couldn't find a name brand piston. Now, in your case, I'm going to suspect you don't have a lathe because most people don't. If you do, maybe try and fit a different piston from a similar saw. If you don't have a lathe, what you can do is, if you could find a set of rings that'll fit on that piston, take the saw apart, make sure that the cylinder is in good shape. Take that piston and clean it up. Make sure there's nothing flared out, meaning your score marks aren't facing out. Now, you said there's no scoring in the cylinder. If there's no scoring in the cylinder, you might have had a piece of carbon go through there and just scratch the piston up. Clean the piston up. Make sure it's not rattling in the bore. Put a fresh set of rings in there and keep going. Often score marks on a piston, as long as they're not scoring the cylinder, will just hold more oil and the saw will be fine. I have saws here that have score marks on the pistons for years, and I'm still running them, and they have lots of compression, and they're fine. So I would probably do that. My Super Pro 70 that I built for bucking, it's in a playlist if you want to check this out. I sanded the factory OEM piston that had score marks on it. That saw was pretty scored on the exhaust side. I couldn't find another piston, so I sanded it, made sure the rings were in good shape, and put that saw back together. Now that saw is ported really, really hot, and Bucket's still running that today. That thing is an absolute monster, and it has a scored piston in it. And it's still good. So just because your piston's scored doesn't mean your saw is going to blow up. We'd all prefer to look through the exhaust port and see a perfect piston, but sometimes that's just not the deal. And I have a couple saws here that are scored. My 562 that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that cylinder is horribly scored, horribly damaged. I've been running that saw like that for 6 years. It's low on compression, but it still cuts. So anyhow, if you could save the stock piston, sometimes a scored stock piston is a lot safer than a questionable aftermarket piston. So that's maybe what I would do, and then just keep running her. Anyhow, I'm going to call this one done. Thank you to everybody that sends me emails. I really appreciate that. And like I said, I haven't been in my emails much, and it was kind of waning on me. It was weighing me down, and I was like, you know what? Let's just do this today. Let's answer some emails on a video. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. And friends, keep your fingers crossed. I'm dying to put that 460 together. I got a lot of yard work, truck work, and equipment to get ready for winter and firewooding to do. But I think I can maybe sneak a little bit of time in this weekend and put that 460 together. Stay tuned. Keep your fingers crossed. I really would like to be sitting at this bench. Thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later.